Imagine lying in bed, your room shrouded in darkness. You feel it, the oppressive weight of something watching you. You strain your eyes and there, at the edge of your bed, is a figure. Its hollow eyes, its gaunt body, its unnerving stillness. You've just encountered the Rake. Welcome to the terrifying world of the Rake. A legend so bone-chilling it will make you question every shadow, every sound, and every sleepless night. Introduction to the legend. The Rake is not your typical horror story. It's a tale whispered on internet forums, shared in late-night conversations, and immortalized in terrifying personal accounts. Originating from the deep corners of the internet, the Rake began as a creepypasta, a piece of fictional horror designed to unsettle and terrify. It was initially part of an experiment to craft a story that could strike fear in even the most skeptical audience. But as more stories surfaced and patterns began to emerge, the line between fiction and reality started to blur, making the Rake a creature of growing fascination and dread. People were captivated by the tales that described encounters with this nightmarish figure. Discussions on forums and online communities transformed it from a mere story to a phenomenon. Many who read about the Rake began reporting eerily similar sightings and experiences, further muddying the waters of its fictional origins. Its influence grew exponentially, fueled by word of mouth and the internet's ability to spread chilling ideas like wildfire. But what is the Rake, exactly? It's described as a pale, hairless creature with unnaturally long limbs and sharp claws, its gaunt body seemingly too fragile yet horrifyingly agile. Its most defining feature? Its hollow, piercing eyes that seem to see straight into your soul. Those who claim to have encountered it often describe an overwhelming sense of dread and the eerie feeling that the Rake isn't just watching but understanding them on an incomprehensible level. This combination of grotesque physicality and psychological torment is what makes the Rake so uniquely terrifying. The origins and evolution. The story of the Rake first surfaced in 2005 on an obscure internet forum. It was part of a project where users collaborated to create the ultimate horror story. But what set the Rake apart was how it resonated with people. The stories weren't just creative, they were deeply disturbing, hinting at something primal, a fear of being watched, hunted, and helpless. As more users shared their interpretations, the legend began to evolve. New descriptions and tales emerged, painting a vivid yet unsettling portrait of this creature. Some claimed it stalked the woods, while others reported seeing it lurking near their homes. Artists began sketching horrifying interpretations of the Rake, with exaggerated claws and hauntingly hollow eyes, while amateur filmmakers brought it to life in low-budget, yet terrifying, short films. What made the Rake truly unforgettable was its ability to tap into a universal fear. The sensation of being watched, even when alone, resonated deeply with readers. People reported sleepless nights after reading these accounts, their imaginations running wild at the slightest sound. The creature became a symbol of vulnerability, embodying a fear that felt too real to ignore. Over time, the legend grew even further. Professional writers began crafting detailed narratives that blurred the lines between fiction and possible reality. Witness accounts multiplied, with alleged sightings ranging from shadowy figures in forests to encounters during late-night drives. And while skeptics dismissed it as a modern myth, others claimed to have seen it with their own eyes. These first-hand stories only deepened the sense of dread surrounding the Rake, giving life to one of the internet's most enduring urban legends. Terrifying encounters. One of the most infamous accounts dates back to 2006, when a family claimed to have experienced a horrifying visit. The husband woke up in the dead of night, drenched in a cold sweat, only to find the Rake sitting at the foot of his bed. It didn't move, but its hollow, unblinking gaze bore into him, paralyzing him with fear. The creature's gaunt, sinewy frame looked as if it were barely human, and its guttural growl, low and menacing, reverberated through the room, making the very air seem heavier. For what felt like hours, but was likely only minutes, the husband lay frozen, unable to speak or move. His wife stirred beside him, her murmurs of confusion muffled under the crushing weight of his terror. Before he could wake her fully, the creature slipped into the shadows, vanishing as silently as it had appeared. The air in the room grew unbearably cold, and it wasn't until the faint light of dawn seeped through the curtains that they could muster the courage to investigate. What they found sent shivers down their spines. Deep, jagged scratches carved into the bedroom wall seemed to form incomprehensible patterns, almost like a language. Faint, clawed footprints trailed from the bed to the window, leading out into the yard where the grass was flattened in long, unnatural streaks, as if something had dragged itself away. Was it just a nightmare? Or something far more sinister that had come to visit them in the dead of night? Reports like this are not isolated. From hikers in dense, eerie forests to night watchmen patrolling vast, empty lots, the stories all carry a chilling familiarity. Witnesses describe the Rake as a silent, otherworldly observer. It doesn't always attack, instead, it watches. Its presence alone is enough to leave its victims in a state of psychological torment, their minds haunted by its image long after it disappears. Some recall waking to faint sounds of scratching outside their windows, almost rhythmic, like a deliberate attempt to draw attention. Others report fleeting glimpses of the creature disappearing into the shadows, always just out of reach but close enough to feel its unsettling gaze. The accounts grow more unsettling when you consider the consistency across different locations and witnesses. One story from a lone camper described an entire night of dread, spent huddled inside their tent as faint whispers and rustling sounds circled them relentlessly. By morning, the campsite was untouched save for a ring of claw marks etched into the soil around their tent. Another tale recounts a truck driver's horrifying encounter on a desolate highway, where his vehicle briefly stalled, and he saw the figure perched atop a road sign, its hollow eyes following him as he frantically tried to restart the engine. But it doesn't end there. A chilling account from a suburban mother tells of an eerie encounter one quiet evening. As she put her children to bed, she noticed strange, rhythmic tapping on the window. Peering out into the dark, she glimpsed a pale, contorted figure watching her with its hollow eyes, unmoving and unblinking. The figure stayed there, perfectly still, for what felt like an eternity before melting back into the shadows as if it were never there. Days later, she discovered claw-like scratches etched faintly into the windowpane. Terrified, she began to question if she or her family had been targeted by something far beyond her understanding. These stories, whether exaggerated or entirely true, all share one thing in common: an overwhelming sense of being preyed upon. The Rake's visits leave an indelible mark on the minds of those who encounter it, etching not just physical signs but a psychological weight that lingers for years. For some, the torment doesn't end with the sighting. Witnesses report recurring nightmares, seeing the creature's silhouette in their dreams, or hearing faint whispers when they're alone. Some claim they feel its presence even during the day, an inexplicable weight of unease that lingers as though the creature's gaze follows them long after it has disappeared. Other victims describe strange phenomena following their encounters. Electronics malfunction without reason, lights flicker erratically, and pets act strangely, barking into dark corners or cowering in fear at seemingly empty spaces. These signs, small as they are, fuel the belief that the Rake does more than just visit. It leaves a lingering trace of itself, an imprint that continues to haunt its victims. This sense of presence is not always obvious but builds over time, with victims reporting an escalation of these eerie occurrences. Doors creak open without explanation, shadows seem to shift unnaturally, and unexplainable chills pass through rooms at random. Some have even described finding strange symbols or markings near the locations of their encounters, scratches on walls or faint impressions on the ground that defy explanation. These phenomena lead many to believe that the Rake doesn't simply leave but instead marks its victims, ensuring its influence remains long after the initial sighting. Witnesses report a growing paranoia, an unshakable feeling of being watched even in the brightest daylight. This psychological toll is profound, with some individuals withdrawing from social interactions and others seeking professional help to deal with their relentless anxiety. The fear isn't just of the creature itself but of what it represents. It becomes a symbol of vulnerability, a chilling reminder that sometimes, the shadows might be watching, and that once it has found you, it might never truly leave. Those who have encountered the Rake often wonder if it is waiting for something, or worse, if its return is inevitable. For these victims, life is forever divided into two parts: the time before the Rake, and the time spent fearing its return. The psychology behind the fear. Why does the Rake strike such a chord with so many? Experts suggest it taps into our primal fears. Its humanoid form reminds us of ourselves, but its distorted features push it into the realm of the uncanny, that unsettling zone where the familiar becomes alien. This duality plays on our instinctive need for recognition and survival, leaving us paralyzed by the thought that what stands before us is both comprehensible and entirely alien. It's not just the fear of being attacked, It's the fear of being observed by something we can't comprehend, something whose intentions are unknowable. The notion of being watched without understanding why is deeply rooted in human psychology. We are hardwired to fear predators, especially those we cannot anticipate or understand. This is why the rake doesn't need to physically harm its victims to instill terror. Its presence alone, silent and unyielding, is enough to invade the deepest corners of the mind, where rationality fails, and instinct takes over. Some victims describe feeling an almost predatory intelligence behind its gaze, as if it is studying them, waiting for something incomprehensible to occur. Some researchers link sightings of the rake to sleep paralysis, a condition where individuals wake up unable to move, often accompanied by hallucinations of dark, menacing figures. These episodes are terrifying on their own, but the addition of a creature like the rake transforms them into something far more sinister. Victims of sleep paralysis often recount feelings of suffocation or the sensation of being pinned down, a perfect stage for the mind to project an external source of terror. Could the rake be a manifestation of our deepest nightmares, a subconscious creation given form during our most vulnerable state? Or could these episodes hint at something beyond explanation, where our darkest fears meet an unsettling reality? Interestingly, psychologists also point to a phenomenon called the watcher effect. This refers to the deep discomfort humans feel when they believe they are being observed, even if they cannot see the observer. The rake taps into this universal unease, amplifying it with its hollow, unblinking stare that seems to pierce directly into its victim's soul. This effect leaves many unable to shake the feeling that they are never truly alone, that the rake could be lurking just beyond their sight, in the periphery of their awareness, waiting for the right moment to appear. The rake across cultures. Interestingly, creatures resembling the rake appear in folklore across the globe, hinting at a universal fear embedded in human history. In Japanese culture, the naprabo is a faceless entity that haunts travelers, its blank visage instilling an eerie sense of unease. These beings are said to appear in desolate areas, often approaching their victims with silent, unnerving persistence before revealing their true, featureless form. The sheer abnormality of their appearance strikes at the core of what humans perceive as disturbing. In European tales, pale, thin humanoids called forest watchers have been reported for centuries. These figures are said to dwell in dense, ancient woods, moving with an unnatural grace and remaining just out of sight. Witnesses describe hearing whispers carried on the wind or catching fleeting glimpses of gaunt shapes lurking between the trees. These watchers were often interpreted as omens of misfortune or death, their mere presence enough to send villagers fleeing. Even in North American folklore, accounts of eerie, humanoid creatures have surfaced. Indigenous stories speak of shadow-like entities that dwell on the periphery of vision, often linked to warnings or guardianship over sacred grounds. The similarities in these tales, the pale, haunting forms, their silent observation, and their association with the unknown, draw an unsettling parallel to the rake. Could these ancient legends be the ancestors of the rake, a timeless fear adapted for a modern audience? Or is the rake a manifestation of something that has always lurked in the shadows, its form changing to fit the fears of each generation? Perhaps it's both, a symbol of humanity's deep-seated dread of the unknowable, always waiting just beyond the edge of perception. Impact on pop culture. The rake has left an indelible mark on pop culture, becoming one of the most recognizable and haunting figures in modern horror storytelling. It has inspired a range of video games, such as The Rake, Back to Ashes, where players must confront the terrifying creature in atmospheric settings that echo the stories shared by countless witnesses. These games bring the lore of the rake to life, immersing players in environments filled with tension and fear, where every shadow could conceal the creature. Similarly, the rake's ominous presence has also been a recurring theme in countless YouTube horror series, where creators delve into its lore, dramatize terrifying encounters, and even recreate chilling scenarios based on alleged sightings, further feeding the fascination around this creature. Beyond independent projects, the rake's unsettling design has had a profound influence on blockbuster films. Creatures with its gaunt, humanoid frame and piercing, hollow eyes have appeared in numerous cinematic hits, subtly paying homage to its unnerving aesthetic. The rake's influence can be seen in characters that stalk silently, evoke dread with their unnatural movements, and unsettle audiences with their otherworldly appearances. Filmmakers often cite the Rake as an inspiration for designing antagonists that embody both psychological and physical horror. The creature's influence stretches even further, appearing in fan art, amateur films, and horror-themed merchandise, from collectible figurines to haunting posters, cementing its status as a cultural icon. The Rake's appeal is not just limited to entertainment. Its story has become a phenomenon that transcends mere narrative, evolving into a symbol of modern fears. People are drawn to the Rake because it embodies the unknown, the unexplainable, and the terrifying possibility that it might be real. This universal fascination stems from the primal fears the Rake ignites: the fear of the dark, the fear of being watched, and the fear that somewhere, just out of sight, something might be waiting. These fears are not bound by time or culture, allowing the Rake's legend to resonate with audiences around the world. Its reach continues to grow as each new generation discovers the legend and reshapes it through their interpretations. Artists and writers expand its mythology, while new media platforms offer fresh ways to share its terror. Social media has played a pivotal role in spreading the Rake's chilling stories, with posts, memes, and videos reaching millions of viewers. The creature's adaptability ensures its place in the annals of horror, constantly evolving yet always remaining rooted in the darkest corners of human imagination. So, is the Rake just a modern campfire tale? Or is it something more? The uncertainty itself is what makes this legend so compelling. It thrives in the spaces between belief and skepticism, between reality and imagination, where the line between truth and fiction blurs. Whether you choose to believe in its existence or dismiss it as a chilling piece of fiction, there's no denying that the Rake has carved its place in the darkest corners of our collective imaginations. Its story lives on, whispered in hushed tones around the world, growing with every retelling, every eerie account, and every shadow that moves just out of sight. What about you? Have you ever felt the weight of unseen eyes in the dead of night or heard faint whispers that seemed to come from nowhere? Have you had a brush with the unknown, a fleeting encounter that made you question the boundaries of reality? Let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear your stories. And as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. You never know who might need a reminder to check under their bed tonight or close their window just a little tighter, because sometimes, the most terrifying stories are the ones we can't quite explain.